The people surrounding a midsummer music competition are getting murdered. Maybe the killer just wants to keep it in the family? We're talking piano playing.
Eugenics.
And just what is Joyce's job anyways on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me as always is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric.
Before we get started this time, we wanted to say a quick thank you to the listeners who have just started sending us emails. We're really appreciative, and we are really excited by getting these emails because we love hearing from other people about how much they love Midsomer, like we do. Now, a couple of listeners had questions about sort of the nature of the show, so we just felt that for any new listeners, we just wanted us to remind you that this show is for fans by fans, and that we love Midsomer Murders and love talking about it. We try to be funny and irreverent, which we feel is in keeping with the show.
For us, talking about the show means talking about what we liked in an episode as well as what we didn't. That's part of the fun of Midsomer Murders. We don't expect everyone to agree with us. We don't even agree with each other. And we love to hear when you don't. Whether you agree with us or disagree, talking about it is all part of the fun. So keep those emails coming. All right, today we're going to talk about Masterclass, the 5th episode of the 13th series. It originally aired October 6th, 2010. It was directed by Rennie Rye and written by Nicholas Martin. Let's tickle those ivories.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
Sorry, I'm Detective Chief Inspector Barnaby, Boston CID.
I saw her sinking under the water, and she had a baby.
Why don't we go back to the house and we can have a chat then?
You don't believe me, do you? Nobody believes me.
I've learned to keep a very open mind.
Auditions are being held at Coston Concert Hall for the Fielding Prize, a competition for students to win a chance to study with renowned pianist Sir Michael Fielding. Winners of the prize go on to international careers. Losers end up with just national careers. The judges are Fielding's daughters, the super cranky Miriam and the super crunchy Constance. Oh, and Joyce Barnaby is running things backstage. Is this her job? Teen performer Zoe Stock awes everyone, including the sisters, with her playing. So odd, in fact, they offer her a spot despite her suffering a massive nosebleed in the middle of her piece. But that's okay at the Fielding School, where it's all about how you finish. A short time later, Zoe and other students are attending classes with Sir Michael. Only 3 will get through to the final round, so the competition is fierce. Super confident Benedict Marsh wants to practice with Zoe, but she chooses to meet young hottie Orlando Guest for a walk by the river. But when she catches Orlando with another student, Francesca Sharp, she chooses to go off on her own. At the river, Zoe sees a woman in a white dress running along the banks holding a baby. Zoe turns away for a minute, and then back to see the woman jump into the river. She tries to help, but the current is too strong, and the woman drowns. But was this real? Because when Barnaby, Jones, and a large number of Coston police show up to hunt for the body, they can't find it. Jones interviews Reverend Gregory, who seems shocked about a possible drowning, but is clearly hiding something. Barnaby remembers a similar drowning that he worked 2 decades earlier. How? Jones digs up the case files, stating that the woman was never identified, but her description fits what Zoe saw. That night is a big student concert where Sir Michael will decide who is advancing. Orlando has all the girls giggling, and Francesca's dad is the worst kind of controlling stage parent. Barnaby snoops around the school and discovers a photo of Francis Galton, the founder of fingerprint science, just hanging in the library. Which is weird, right? That seems weird.
Yeah.
Sir Michael announces the 3 finalists going forward are Zoe, Francesca, and Orlando. Benedict has a bit of a meltdown where he promises to show them all. As the students get private one-on-one lessons with Sir Michael, Zoe's parents get a room at a local pub run by Jonas Slee, who suffers a rare medical condition that makes him hypersensitive to bright light. Zoe runs into Benedict, who begs for help to get back into the competition, conveniently mentioning he's an orphan. Francesca gives her virginity to Orlando, who seems like a real class act. Zoe goes to the Reverend's church to play the organ because, why not? The Reverend speaks to Sister Agnes and tells her that Zoe looks just like someone. The detectives pop by the church to ask the Rev some more questions, and they catch him in a lie. As Barnaby leaves the church, Zoe rushes out to tell him something, and an unknown person pushes a pile of roofing tiles onto them, narrowly missing them.
Okay.
This is one of those clear examples where, Midsomer Murders has a format. Murder at the top, another murder on around the halfway point, usually a third murder, like three-quarters of the way through, and then a rush to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is clearly breaking that format. One of those episodes that does break the format. There's no clear murder or even a clear death by the end of the first half. We don't actually know that what she's seen with this drowning is really real or just some hallucination or a ghostly specter. Like, we don't really know.
No, we don't. And I love the fact that they occasionally break the formula, because I think it works when they do. It works when they don't. But when you get into a formula, you start establishing a rut. And every once in a while, breaking that formula throws the audience off, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's always nice when they shake things up, and they throw some weird curveballs at you, or I think it would be insane if like the one format breaker they've never done is having one murder. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Although at the end of the first half, up until like someone tries to kill them, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no case here.
Yeah.
There's either there's no body, so there's no crime. The drowning that she witnesses is self-inflicted, so it's not murder.
No.
Even. So what's Barnaby investigating? Is he like trying to dig up this cold case from like 20? Like, I feel like if this was like an American cop show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Barnaby's superior would basically be like, "What are you doing? You've got so many open cases. Why are you investigating a 20-year-old cold case that we don't even know wasn't even murder?"
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, Barnaby doesn't seem to have much interaction with his superiors. We've seen them on occasion. He seems to dismiss them and not get along too well with them and kind of do his own thing. But he does seem to have this, and again, we've talked about this, his detection by instinct, where he kind of fixates on something more from his gut than from actual evidence. I mean, and this happens a lot in detective fiction, and a lot of times there is a clue that's sticking out, but you can't quite identify it unless you are Sherlock Holmes, and you do know that mud only comes in Scotland, and that's why that guy is the murderer. But usually there is something that's niggling in his brain, and he can't quite place it, and it's kind of put down to instinct.
Yeah, but it's like instinctually, there's no case here.
No.
There's no at best they have evidence that a teen, not even a teenager, a grown adult, she's 18, as she says in the episode, had some kind of vision / really, in cop parlance, she had a hallucination.
Yeah.
There's no investigation. Yeah, it's from a thing that happened 20 years ago. But again, self-inflicted drowning. It's not a murder. There's nothing to investigate. Like, if he's trying to find out who this person was, that's one thing. But he doesn't, it just seems to be like, I think people are lying to me and I'm going to dig into it. I'm like, yeah, you're a cop. People lie to you.
Yeah.
It happens.
But let's just say it's a good thing he does stick with this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But did you notice, by the way, during that kind of weird drowning sequence, right? Mm-hmm. That fog blows in and out. Like it's supposed to be a fog, I guess, but it just looks like wispy smoke, and then like it seems to just kind of blow, as fog does, it seems to blow like smoke. Yeah.
It kind of goes in and out, but that's okay. You're always at the vagaries of weather and wind when you're shooting outside. For me, the thing that stuck out was the dress that the woman was wearing with it seemed it was set in the 90s, but it seemed very 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. By the way, I'm assuming that is the same actress that played Zoe. They don't have a credit for they don't have a credit for that character, Mad Molly. Spoiler alert for the next 20 minutes. In any of the IMDb or anything like that. Like the close-up kind of looks like her, but they've also sort of distorted it, and with the wig, it's really hard to see.
It is, and I assume it's her as well, because there is no credit there. And they're always talking about how much she looks like her, except for the hair is obviously, very dark.
But they normally put that in there. Like if an actor is doing a dual role, they normally put that in there, and it's not. And it was just like, oh, well, I don't know who that is. So Tom, is basically just kind of like sniffing around Zoe and seems very fascinated by Zoe's piano playing and all that.
I think he has a very paternal, in a good way, very fatherly feeling for her as a young woman and we know that he is very fond of music. He jammed with a murderer. But he also seems to have this very protective nature for the children, even when they end up being the murderers. and there are a few that have turned out to be murderers. But you see that with the kids, and I think a lot of it has to do with his relationship with Cully and everything. He is, at his core, I think maybe, he is a father. He's a cop, but he's also a father.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's very cute and sweet, but at some point, like, I was really shocked the parents were just like, why are you still around?
Yeah.
Like, up until that first, like, the end of that first half, it's like, someone just needs to turn and goes, like, Jones does the most with, like, he kind of is like, sir, like, she's clearly not all there. Yeah. He's like, no, there's something here. Like, she saw something. So, obviously, the big focus of this episode is the piano competition and these kids who are all playing piano. I do not play the piano.
I have a piano that was left here by the previous owners of my house. The cats play it more than I do.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think any of these, like any of, and I know that they were like not even, I don't even think they brought in anyone to specially record something, because I happened to notice that the very first piano piece that we hear in the very first scene, that audition, like someone's playing a piano piece. I actually have the exact same rendition on a compilation of like great classical songs. So there's nothing in any of these scenes where we see these kids playing, or like when Zoe is supposedly having these like massively awestruck, like I feel like the actors do like a really good job at reacting to music they're not actually hearing. And then they were like, well, crap, we used all of our money on James Fox. Get the cheapest piano versions we can find.
I have to say, to be fair, I could not tell a very good rendition of a piano piece to a great piano piece to, quite frankly, probably a very mediocre one, because I have very prosaic tastes in music. I will admit that.
And I just feel like warning bells really should be going off to people to anybody involved in that competition. It's like, wait, the girl that suffered enough of like a bloody nose that it actually looked like someone had broken her nose. Like the amount of blood that is coming out of her nose, like at her face at the end of that opening scene, like that's an ER visit. And yet you're like, you played perfectly. You get in. It's like, are we sure she can handle the actual pressure of this competition?
Yeah. She kind of gets over the stress very quickly.
I always thought it was interesting too, is that the way that concert, where they sort of announced the three people going forward was a little weird, because it just like stands up and it's like in front of like all the kids and their parents. Yeah. It's like, here's the three that are going forward. The rest of you, get the hell out of here.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like he consulted with the daughters at all. So it was all his choice, which explains how Orlando got in, which we'll talk about later.
We'll talk about later. Yeah, like the selections of who goes through was a little weird. Like, I'm not sure, like Benedict having his little freak out. It's like, I'm not sure Benedict played any better than any of the rest of them. Frankly, they all seemed fine. They just keep hammering that Zoe has this talent. Zoe has this talent. It just makes me think of like when actors like 20 years ago, right? When they started really introducing digital effects into TV and movie, and they didn't really know how to communicate to actors what exactly they're supposed to be responding to. Yeah. So you would get sort of these weird sort of reactions where it would be like this really cool, intense virtual effect, and like the actors would be like, and yet, or it would be like a really lame effect, and they would act like it's the coolest thing they've ever seen in their life.
Yeah, I think Carrie Fisher discussed that from the original Star Wars, where she says, I'm supposed to be reacting to my entire world being blown up, my family being gone, my whole entire record collection disappearing, and it's just a guy waving a hand where I'm supposed to look.
I liked that Barnaby, there was a moment where Barnaby was interviewing the sisters, and he asked them for a ticket to the concert. Was the student concert a real hot ticket? Oh, only a select few come into this student concert.
I guess it's a very prestigious prize, and maybe they have enough people in the, I don't know, the music industry that would be interested in getting tickets.
There's guards at the school talent show. Are you on the list?
Yeah, they just hired Jonas.
I think there might have been something cut for time in the show, because there's a very clear close-up of Sir Michael taking heart pills.
Those are actually stomach pills.
Were those stomach pills? They don't...
Yeah, because he grabs his stomach, And that's part of the porphyria, which we'll talk about later. Yeah.
Really? Because it's so subtle, but they also never bring it up again.
And they never bring it up, so I think something was cut, And
it looks like heart pills. They also look like nitro pills. So I think this is interesting because this is sort of begs the question, because the first Barnaby that we see in this episode is not Tom, it's Joyce, and who's working the competition. So what's Joyce's job?
I guess she's just one of those backstage wranglers and keeps people on schedule.
But she's like,
or something.
But she's like, I'm volunteering. Like at one point, I think she says she's volunteering for the competition. It seems like a pretty big volunteering, considering that you're there for weeks, because from the cut from like that point where like the audition to the actual, where they're actually school, that's a long gap of time that they're cutting across.
Yeah.
And she's still around doing something.
I assume that she was just there for the public competition parts of things, because she's not hanging out at the manor or anything. And I guess she's kind of like the local contact, because if you look at the very beginning, they list a bunch of cities, including London, where they're holding these auditions. And I assume that there are people like her, volunteers, that are in these cities doing this. And then Corsten, I always have to, is the last city listed there, because the manor is just outside of Corsten.
I feel like Joyce needs a job.
Yeah.
She
bored. Has a lot of hobbies.
She's bored. She's clearly she was clearly a housewife and stay-at-home mom. Collie's gone. Mm-hmm. So she's, learning to cooking badly from Delia Smith videos and taking all these weird classes and stuff like that. She's clearly bored. She needs a job. Joyce needed a job.
Yeah. I'm glad that they did, actually, when we got the new Barnaby family, they gave Sarah a job. It's a much more contemporary family situation.
Well, she's just a teacher, right?
Yeah.
I think they mentioned it a couple of times. Well, I mean, not just a teacher, but it's just it's not because again, they do the same thing with her that they did with Joyce, is that she is a teacher, but she's always seeming to be in other things, all of a sudden she's also the president of the local historical society. Wait, what?
Well, that kind of goes along, I think, with being a teacher. There is something, she's not off taking painting classes or stuff. She has something that ties in with her job as a teacher, which is being part of the historical society.
And before we get hate mail, my mom's a teacher or is a retired teacher. I have a lot of respect for the teacher establishment. I wasn't implying that being just a teacher was like some minuscule thing. I was talking about in the context of this show, people seem to have a lot of side hustles.
Hey, we're podcasters.
That's right. And if there's any kind of billionaires that listen to this show that want to just donate us money, you can reach us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com.
Nathan Lane, sponsor us.
Nathan Lane?
He did that in Only Murders in the Building. He was the sponsor.
Don't plug other shows. don't plug other shows. All right, let's hit the cast highlights.
All right. Well, playing Zoe Stark is Lydia Wilson. She's a graduate of RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and has appeared in About Time, Star Trek Beyond, Never Let Me Go, Ripper Street, and Flack. She's currently in the TV show The Swarm, based on a best-selling novel in Germany. In her off hours, she likes to play the oboe and sing in bands, but we have no idea if she can actually play the piano. She faked it pretty well, though. Matthew James Thompson plays dirtbag pianist Orlando Guest.
I wrote that and it still makes me laugh.
One of his earliest roles was in the film Billy Elliot. He's also appeared in the shows Believe and Britannia High, as well as the films About a Boy and A Killer Party, a murder mystery musical. He was one of the actors who played Spider-Man in the infamous Broadway musical Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and was one of the many injuries that were reported from that show. His was only a minor one that required a few stitches and not the actor who fell 30 feet and nearly died. He also led the 2013 revival of Pippin.
Francesca Sharp was played by Catherine Press, who's appeared in Closed Circuit, Foyle's War, and Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, lately she has taken the auteur route, writing and directing and starring in 2 short films, Help, I've Stolen Amy Adams' Nose, and Reaching For. Clifford Rose was our Reverend Gregory. His first role was in 1959's Hilda Lessways, and since then he appeared in the films Marat Sade and The Iron Lady, and on the TV programs The Pallisers, Doctor Who, War and Remembrance, Inspector Morse, Foyle's War, and his final role was the Dean of Windsor in The Crown. Now, he performed with the Royal Shakespeare Company and appeared in 36 of Shakespeare's 37 plays. He passed away in 2021.
I kind of want to know which one he didn't appear in.
The worst one.
Cymbeline. Next, we have Ian Pulliston Davies, who played Terry Stock. He's done steady work as a character actor and is known for playing plenty of bad guys, but it's really nice that he's playing a dad here. I think he does a good job with it. Yeah. He's appeared in EastEnders, Hollyoaks, The Bill, Coronation Street, Marcella, Tin Star, Pennyworth, and Agatha Raisin. Ian has obsessive-compulsive disorder, and he says he was able to draw on his own experience with that when writing the 2004 film Dirty Filthy Love, in which the 2 main characters suffer from this disorder. Janet Dibley was Mama Dawn Stock. She's done EastEnders, Casualty, Unforgotten, The Bill, and Coronation Street. She's married to the actor Tyler Butterworth, who is the son of Peter Butterworth, known for the Carry On films in the UK.
Do you think Peter Butterworth's wife was Mrs. Butterworth?
Oh.
Harry Myers played Jonas Slee. Now, he only had a handful of roles before Midsomer, and in 2016, he seems to have switched almost exclusively to voice acting. He performed in a number of video games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Pillars of the Earth. He also played several characters in the Audible adaptation of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. Now, I dug up his website, where he describes his voice as deep, rich, and smoky, the sort of voice that could soothe you to sleep or give you nightmares, depending on what you want. But can we talk also about his vampire-like first scene? They open up the curtains and the bright light hits him. He's like,
all right. Next we have Sister Agnes, and she was played by Elizabeth Bell in what was her final role. She passed away in 2012. Another actress on this show with a lengthy career going back to the 60s. She played Edith Frank in a TV miniseries adaptation of The Diary of Anne Frank. In later years, she appeared in Casualty, Doctors, and The Bill, like everybody else. On stage, she also had a long career and was a founding member of the New Vic Theatre. In a fun love story, she met her partner, the architect Henry Osborne, in 1971, and although together for 4 decades, they didn't marry until 2011.
I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah. Zoe might have made a mistake passing over Benedict Marsh because the actor Richard Fleischman got super hunky after this role. He was on Coronation Street for 4 years prior to Midsomer. Since then, he appeared on Call the Midwife, The 4 Weddings and a Funeral TV show, and recently was on the show Deep Heat and appeared in the Sandman Netflix series as Ken. Naked Ken. Yeah, I watched it. He will also appear in the film R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the Damned, which I have no idea what that is.
It's a sequel to a movie that was so bad and bombed so hard, it came out over a decade ago, and they are just now trying to get a sequel out. We got some really cool return visitors. Sylvestre Letozel, probably mispronouncing that, was Miriam Fielding. Sylvestre also appeared in the Series 3 episode Beyond the Grave. Her first IMDb credit is the role of Child in a 1968 episode of Doctor Who. She's appeared in a number of TV shows and films, including Inspector Lindley, Silent Witness, Doc Martin, adaptations of Northanger Abbey and Parades, and Father Brown, Death in Paradise, The Crown. She's great in the film Death of Stalin, and she currently appears in Intelligence with David Schwimmer and Ted Lasso's Nick Mohammed. But beyond all of this, researching her, apparently the role she will always be best known for in the UK is she is the water in Mallorca girl in an infamous Heineken ad inspired by My Fair Lady.
The water in Mallorca doesn't taste like what it ought to.
No. The water in Mallorca don't taste like what it ought to.
Here you are. Get your laughing gear in there.
Oh, golly. The water in Mallorca...
What's that?
Don't taste like what it ought to. Oh, gosh.
Her sister, Constance Fielding, was played by Frances Barber, who appeared in the episode Crime and Punishment. She starred in the cult classic Sammy and Rosie Get Laid, and was the infamous Eye Patch Lady, also known as Madame Kovarian, on one season of the Matt Smith Doctor Who. And that's immediately what I thought of when I saw her, was, that's the Eye Patch Lady. She also appeared in 3 films with Gary Oldman, Prick Up Your Ears, which is a fantastic film, We Think the World of You, and Dead Fish. She's worked with Kenneth Branagh, Peter Greenaway, Dennis Potter, the Royal Shakespeare Company, and the National Theatre. She's appeared in a lot of British TV and film, including The Bookshop, The Goal Films, Poirot, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, and most recently in The Chelsea Detective, and the upcoming show Dodger, a prequel to Oliver Twist about the Artful Dodger. She's been a bit controversial in recent years. She was a very vocal supporter of Scotland's staying in Great Britain, and she signed letters supporting J.K. Rowling's statements about gender.
Moving on. Michael Maloney, who played domineering dad Simon Sharp, also appeared in The Lions of Cawston, where I think he's the killer. He's been in Branagh's Henry V, Mel Gibson's Hamlet, playing Rosencrantz, Lawrence Fishburne's Othello, also featuring Kenneth Branagh, Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, playing Laertes. He played Banquo in a TV adaptation of Macbeth, Malvolio in a TV adaptation of Twelfth Night, and he did the voice in something called Shakespeare: The Animated Tales. Now, outside of Shakespeare, he's been in the films Babel, The Iron Lady, and Belfast. He's done a lot of work with Branagh. I think he's in Branagh's clique. Mm-hmm. Lately on TV, he's been in The Crown, and he's been in the adaptation of Magpie Murders, which was the mystery series from Midsomer creator Anthony Horowitz, based off his novel. And I love this bit. And even though he berated her in this episode, it looks like Maloney really bonded with co-star Catherine Press because he's appeared in both her short films. He plays her dad again in Help I Stole Amy Adams' Nose, and he's a doctor in Reaching For.
Wow. I guess they really hit it off in a father-daughter way. Nadia Cameron Blakey, who played Penelope Guest, also appeared in the episode The Christmas Haunting, which seems to be her final acting role. Before Midsomer, she appeared in the films Tomorrow Never Dies, Batman Begins, and the shows Above Suspicion, The Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and Peep Show. She seems to have retired from acting, and according to her Instagram, she now designs jewelry. I thought she had a very Cate Blanchett look to her, especially in that black dress at the end, when she's making out with Sir Michael. Next, we have the role of middle-aged woman, who was Stephanie Jacob. She's the one at the end who wants to hear a little Lionel Richie. She appeared in the episodes Last Year's Model as Solicitor and Secrets and Spies, where she plays Alice. Jacob is a working character actress who most recently had 2 appearances as Mrs. Dorothy Carney in the current season of Call the Midwife.
And I think to the shock of no one, this week's Village Star goes to James Fox, who played Sir Michael Fielding. What a performance and what a life. So we're going to actually go a little bit longer on him because he had such a weird, crazy career. He was born in London as William Fox. His older brother is Edward, who is also a celebrated actor and a Midsomer murderer. His younger brother, Robert, is also in the business as a film producer. Now, James's first film role was in 1950's The Miniver Story at the age of 11. But he didn't get his big break until the director Tony Richardson actually saw him working in a bank and offered him a role in his classic film, The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner. Fox's father actually tried to forbid him from doing the film, saying James was not a talented actor and he should keep the security of the bank job. Well, Dad, instead, within 2 years, Fox would win the BAFTA for Most Promising Newcomer for The Servant. His career hit a snag, though, in 1970, with his performance in a film called Performance. In that film, Fox played a violent mobster who hides out at the home of a reclusive rock star played by some upstart named Mick Jagger. The film is very arty and weird and was ahead of its time with graphic violence and sexual content. Nowadays, it's considered one of the greatest British films of all time. But back then, it was incredibly controversial, and critics walked out of screenings of it.
Wow.
The backlash to this film, plus he felt a psychological toll from playing such a violent character, caused Fox to take a break for 10 years from acting. During that time, he became a born-again Christian missionary. Apparently today he's not as involved. He returned to acting in 1981, and since then he has had a fantastic career. He appeared in Remains of the Day, A Passage to India, Patriot Games, Sexy Beast, just to name a few. His last role so far was in 2018's Surviving Christmas with the Relatives. Now, critics panned this one too, but hey, who knows what they're going to say about it in 40 years.
They'll still hate it.
On the episode Masterclass, Fox said it was the script that got him to do it. I have been asked to be in the series before, he said, but I felt this one was a special script. It's a good one, and I wanted to do it. He also enjoyed working with his on-screen family. My daughters, Constance and Miriam, are played by Frances Barber and Sylvester Tozel. They're brilliant actors, fantastic as their characters, and really good company. We were a pretty happy family off-screen and had a hilarious time, although on-screen we were a bit dysfunctional. We're all slightly nuts, and that's very Midsomer, so it's acceptable. I mean, that's Midsummer's motto, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in one of the great British acting families. Edward Fox, we'll talk about when we get to his episode. His son Lawrence Fox appeared for several seasons as the detective sergeant in Lewis. Lawrence eventually ended up running for mayor and lost badly. And he was the one who was married to Billie Piper for a while. So very connected acting family.
And I think he does a great job in the episode.
Yeah.
It's interesting is that his performance, it seems quiet and kind of sweet. And then by the end you realize, what he has been doing the whole time is, he's creepy as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break right here. And we're going to come back with the second half of Masterclass. And we're back. Let's check out the second half of Masterclass.
Zoe, it's the S-shows. Get out of the house. We're on our way.
Why? What do you mean?
Give it in. Zoe, Sir Michael is your father.
What?
And your grandfather. Get out of there!
Everyone assumes that the falling tiles were meant for Zoe, who tells Barnaby that Benedict is hanging around still. He notices a rash on Zoe's neck, and she says that comes from an allergy to alcohol since she had just had some communion wine. Her parents want her to go back home with them, but Zoe refuses, saying that she feels a connection to the school, so they compromise. Zoe can continue classes, but will stay with them at the pub. Later, Orlando corners Zoe and kisses her while Benedict pervs on them from the window. Turns out this is a part of Orlando and his mother's game plan. Orlando is to seduce the girls and put them in emotional tailspins, while his mother gets close to Sir Michael on a hot date the following night. However, the sisters are onto Orlando and don't like how he's behaving towards Zoe. And Francesca's dad finds out he's been manipulating her and promises to deal with Orlando. Not looking good.
Nope.
At the pub, Zoe finds a photo on the wall of the woman she saw drown. Jacob says that's Mad Molly, who used to live in a shack out in the woods. So Barnaby takes Zoe out there to see if it jogs anything, and she finds a doll she remembers. So was she here before? Barnaby also finds evidence that Benedict has been living there since leaving the school. Barnaby can tell Zoe's parents are clearly hiding something and pleads with the parents to tell them the truth. But they beg off, asking him not to push. Joyce has been doing some reading and informs Barnaby that Galton, the fingerprint guy that he's so hot on, was also super into eugenics, so much that the Nazis were real big fans of his. That doesn't sit well with Tom. Orlando makes a date with Zoe to meet at the treehouse. She sneaks out and goes to the treehouse and discovers Orlando's body swinging from a rope. The next morning, we finally get to see Bullard, as he says that Orlando was struck in the back of the head and then strung up and suffocated. He also lets them know that a drug the detectives found in the cabin is used to treat porphyria, a disease that can cause hallucinations, light sensitivity, rash from alcohol, etc., etc. Symptoms that sound familiar. Bullard's so useful to have around. The Rev and Sister Agnes receive a report from a DNA lab and call Zoe's parents, telling them something that we can't hear on screen, but it causes them to rush out of the pub to meet him, which in turn causes Jacob to place a mysterious phone call. When they get to the priest, they're too late. He's dead. His throat has been slit. They run off to get Zoe from the school, but she refuses to leave. They tell her the truth. She's adopted, and these murders are all about her. She freaks out, justifiably so, and tells them to get the hell out. Sir Michael attempts to comfort Zoe, telling her the prize has been cancelled and Francesca's gone home, leaving her as his final student. Meanwhile, Zoe's parents are in a terrible car accident and barely survive. Barnaby tells Zoe to remain at the school, where Sir Michael and his daughters finally have her alone. Sister Agnes admits that the Rev found Molly's baby 20 years ago and gave her to the Stocks in an illegal adoption. The Rev had received Molly's confession and did not want that baby going back to the Fieldings. We find out exactly why when the parents wake up and we learn that Sir Michael is Zoe's grandfather. And father. Yep, incest again in Midsomer.
Shocking.
Sir Michael tells Zoe that he has fallen in love with her. Yeah, kissing her and asking to make love to her. She actually starts to follow, believing they have some sort of a deep connection, until Barnaby calls her and tells her what's up and to get out of that house. And she does. She makes a break for the woods with the Fieldings giving chase, and Barnaby and Jodes hot on their heels. She runs into Jacob, who reveals he is her brother. Also probably an uncle. They're a weird family. Luckily, the police catch them all and Zoe is safe. Zoe begins to have a vision, and we get the first reveal. Molly had been trying to get baby Zoe away from her family. She hid her in the bushes and then jumped to her death to escape. The Rev found the baby and hid it from the family, knowing the hell that would await that child. At the school, Sir Michael explains the rest. He's a horrible scumbag who believes that we need to keep breeding the good genes or all will be lost with England. So with his and Zoe's talent, he was hoping to breed a super musician. The tiles were meant for Barnaby because he had been asking too much about Molly, whose death was no big loss, according to Sir Michael. What a dad. Orlando had to die to keep Zoe pure, and all the kids helped with that one. The Reverend was a bit of revenge for him stealing the baby, and the sisters had cut the Stocks' brakes too. He's pretty nonchalant about it all, too, which just makes it that more creepy and evil. In the end, Zoe is back with her adopted family and promises to put a new headstone on Molly's grave. Barnaby and Joyce attempt a night out, but run from the restaurant when they see Benedict behind the piano getting ready to play 3 Times a Lady. Not sure if it was the player or the song.
Poor Benedict.
Hey, he's living the dream. another super gross motive from our killers.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like I was really like I liked this, like rewatching this episode, I really liked it a lot. And then when you get to sort of the reveal, it's just it's like they broke the format, but then made the ending so gross and creepy.
It is a well done episode, and I do like it. And I don't mind when they go a little dark. I know this is a very controversial episode. I know this is one that a lot of people do not like, but it's very well acted. There are some things like Jonas, I think, is a little kind of last minute at the end. He's kind of not much of a presence in the first half. But I think it's very well acted.
There was like, obviously there's really subtle hints throughout the whole thing. You know, obviously Jonas's light sensitivity, which is the big one, but also, you know, what's he doing at the pub with the sing-along? He's playing the piano.
He's playing the piano, and Barnaby remarks that he's a good piano player.
Yep. I feel like it feels very well acted. It's a great breaking of the format. I really enjoyed all of it and where it's going. And then in that last 15 minutes, it gets so dark and disturbing. I think it just leaves a weird taste in your mouth. It's just, you know, I think it's because it's not just incest. It's also this weird eugenics.
Yeah.
Super like murder family. And I think part of this, like, we need to, like, there's not a really great explanation of how this family works. So like, where's the mom? What's happened to the mom? I'm guessing Molly was also his daughter, but that's not really well explained. And also, I feel like if he is that celebrated a pianist, right? Like the amount of like kids would be common knowledge.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that some of these are not legitimate. And as we've learned recently with Herschel Walker and the revelations of all of his unknown illegitimate children, you know, you can hide those pretty well. I have a feeling Molly was not legitimate, and obviously Jonas was not. And the way he's like always, creeping on women, he probably has a lot more out there.
Yeah, but also just the idea of like, so the other two sisters, did he try to breed genes with them too? Are there other really creepy kids running around? Or were they just not talented enough for him? In which case, I feel like they would be more resentful to Zoe. It's like, oh, she's the chosen sister. We've been here doing all the work. But instead, they are super devoted to and murdery for their dad's worldview.
Yeah. I
think that's kind of where it kind of goes off the rails for me, is just to have this kind of weird, creepy murder family. We need we needed like 2 more minutes of exposition.
Yeah.
I think the other question is, did they know who Zoe was before she played?
I don't think they knew before she played. I think they recognized talent and then saw a bit of the resemblance with her mother. And I think that they would be looking for someone about that age at this point, especially in the competition, to see if somebody showed up.
So has the competition the whole time just been to find her?
I don't think so. It seems like it's been going on for a long time, which is why it is, it has to build up that prestige over years.
Oh, no. Do you think that the competition was ways for Sir Michael to find talented young women who
breed with?
Try to breed with them?
That's really gross.
It is, but it's also really plausible in that guy's worldview.
Oh, yeah. I think he would have banged Orlando if it didn't have such a bad left hand.
That's just it. It's just like Orlando was only there because of the mom.
Yeah.
They could have kicked him out at any time for like, it's quite clear they're aware of everything he's been doing. So if they really just didn't want him, like if they had just not thrown the tiles at Barnaby or killed Orlando, or done any of that, just kicked him out. Like they were quite aware of what he was doing. They could have kicked him out. Look, if that family had just left well enough alone, their plan would have succeeded.
Yeah.
They decided to get kill crazy and blew everything up, which again sort of like they're so quick to murder, which again makes me wonder, like, how many other people have died because of this family? You know what I'm saying? It's like they went from like 0 to 60 at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
If they had just not done any of that, if they had just left well enough alone, it's not like Barnaby had evidence of anything. Sooner or later, a real triple homicide's going to have to hit some other part of Midsomer. He's going to have to go investigate it.
Odds are, yeah.
They could have just left well enough alone.
Yeah.
Like, and they would have been, they would have, again, very grossly have achieved their plan of impregnating his daughter.
Yeah.
I don't even know why Francesca was there. Like, was she like the backup plan? Like, there is a lot that's like just, and then she's just gone.
Yeah.
Like, final 30 minutes, she's gone.
She's gone. Yeah. Yeah. It would have been nice to have seen at least her father like dragging her away, realizing things are kind of crazy there.
They move so quickly at that end. They gloss over so much. And I feel like, 2 or 3 more minutes where they kind of explain what has been going on with this family. Like, are there other, like, have they been doing like this weird breeding factory? Because it's not unheard of. You hear it all the time of these fertility doctors who decide to use their own semen and then end up with like hundreds of babies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we both saw that Netflix show.
So obviously all this seems to deal with eugenics. And Eileen, it's time for Eileen's History Corner, where we're going to get an as brief as we could get it, history of eugenics.
Yeah, we tried. All right, I'm going to start out by stating that this is a very dark and complicated subject, so this will, by necessity, leave out a lot of the nuances and details and scientific rivalries that are a part of any scientific theory, especially this one. Okay, so even before humans understood what genes were, the word wasn't coined until 1909, people understood the basics of heredity since ancient times. Many cultures around the world practiced infanticide against children born with deformities, and selective mating was proposed even by Plato to produce guardian classes or fierce warriors. They understood how selective breeding worked with animals, especially farm animals, and that one could breed for certain traits, as for a good hunting dog or a fast racehorse or a more productive milk cow, things we still do. In the middle of the 19th century, however, science was catching up to animal husbandry. First, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, expounding on the hypotheses of many others working on the idea. Then in 1865, Gregor Mendel presented his paper, Experiments on Plant Hybridization. Darwin's work was hugely controversial upon publication, while Mendel's work got barely any notice. Darwin's half-cousin, Francis Galton, was a man of many interests. He created the first scientific study for the use of fingerprints to identify known criminals, building on the work of other scientists without credit. This work, of course, is how he is known to policemen like Tom Barnaby. However, after reading his cousin's book, especially the first chapter on animal breeding, he became fascinated by the subject of heredity. He developed novel ways of measuring all sorts of human traits to track variations, and eventually created the term eugenics in 1883, describing his theories in a book in which he encouraged eugenic marriages at an early age of who he considered eminent people. Basically, he thought that the upper classes merited their place in society because of superior inherited characteristics, apparently never having met a Habsburg, and that they should marry early and have lots of offspring. He also coined the phrase nature versus nurture, coming down on the side of nature, obviously. But even before he came up with the word eugenics, he advocated for its practice, proposing in 1873 that the Chinese, who he considered capable of high civilization, should immigrate to Africa and replace the indigenous populations, who he considered inferior. Very gross. When Mendel's work was rediscovered in 1900, the theory of genetics was applied to eugenics, and it became an accepted academic discipline at many universities. In 1904, the University College London established the Galton Library, still in existence, though there have been calls to remove his name. In 1921, the American Eugenics Society was founded, which argued that eugenics was supported by the Bible and that Christians should promote it. The movement was well funded by a variety of Gilded Age industrialists like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Kellogg. The American Breeders Association membership included Alexander Graham Bell and Luther Burbank. Birth control proponent Margaret Sanger used the language and ideas of eugenics to advocate for birth control as a way of preventing unwanted children being born into a disadvantaged life. Laws are passed preventing the marriage of people with epilepsy and mental disabilities, as well as a new round of anti-miscegenation laws. Eugenics proponents also influenced issues of race and mental health, and it was used as the basis for forced sterilizations in the US, the UK, and many other countries. In the 1927 case, Buck versus Bell, Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote in the 8-1 majority opinion upholding forced sterilizations, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Buck v. Bell has not been officially overturned. In the 1930s, the Nazi Party in Germany, greatly influenced by practices in the US, used eugenics as a justification for their racial policies. This led to the Holocaust and the deaths of 6 million Jews, as well as Roma, homosexuals, promiscuous women, and any individuals they considered defective, degenerate, or unfit. This obviously cast the idea of eugenics, at least in its most overt form, in a bad light, and many organizations recast themselves with new names. Even today, eugenics is still being debated. The massive developments in genetic, genomic, and reproductive technologies have brought up new problems and controversies, although now it's less about breeding and more about genetic engineering. CRISPR gene editing has the potential to treat diseases such as sickle cell anemia and HIV, but it also raises ethical questions about how it might be used. While the elimination of diseases is a noble goal, many in the differently abled community argue against their complete erasure through genetic engineering. So it's a dark subject.
It's a dark subject. It's like I'm not eugenic. Like just the concept of eugenics is just it's like that. It feels wrong to me, but I do understand that genetic traits and things like that. There are some things that people. It's a thorny subject. I don't even want to wade in because I am in no way an expert.
It's a fascinating subject, and I do encourage people to seek out more information on it because it is something that is still being discussed today. I mean, it has been used to horrible effect. Yeah. But the idea of genetic engineering to help people, especially with sickle cell anemia, which is a very devastating disease, on HIV, the fact that they can go in and remove the gene that in the human body of people affected with that and attack that cell at a genetic level is fascinating. So there's a lot of really interesting and very gray subject matter in there. There's also a large, big, huge, humongous, very black area of it.
Yeah. And it kind of leads to the major theme of the show, which is family. Mm-hmm. The theme of this episode, as well as all the Fast and Furious movies. Pointed out, there's all different kinds of parents in this episode.
Yeah, you've got the stereotypical stage parents. You've got the very dysfunctional biological parents and these very loving, very supportive adoptive parents who are just trying to protect their daughter at all costs, and yet still encourage her to, do what she wants to do if she wants to do it. And poor Benedict.
No, who had no parents.
Yeah.
Which, again, he's in there as a red herring with that no parents. He's convenient, I'm an orphan. So, he taught himself the piano. He had to fend for himself. Yeah. And he's dismissed by Michael.
Yes, I thought that was very kind of careless with him because basically he probably should have been chosen over Orlando, but Michael wanted to bang Orlando's mom, and Benedict didn't have a bangable mom or any mom.
Or maybe they witnessed that Benedict clearly had the hots for Zoe.
Well,
and again, didn't want that competition. It's quite also possible that Sir Michael just was like, saw that Benedict was a little disturbed and was like, nah.
Yeah.
I got enough of that. I got enough of that at home.
Yeah.
Sir Michael, could we speak?
Not now, Benedict.
How could you put Orlando through over me? If you just give me a chance.
My decision. Excuse me.
My performance was outstanding. You were making a mistake. You can't do this. I will prove you wrong. I'll prove you all wrong.
Porphyria is sort of the big clue that kind of gives everything away.
Yeah.
And you did some digging up on what that is.
Yeah, and I had been familiar with it because of its discussion about King George III, but it is a inherited liver disease. It comes in two basic forms. It's a kind of a spectrum of diseases, but the acute porphyrias, which cause severe abdominal pain and a plethora of gastrointestinal symptoms, as well as some psychological ones like hallucinations. And then there is cutaneous porphyrias, which cause light sensitivity, sun sensitivity, skin redness and blisters, itching. They both share a classic symptom of dark or purplish urine, and the name porphyria comes from the Greek word for purple. Now, as far as King George is concerned, there have been arguments that his madness may have been caused by porphyria, though it's impossible to prove that. There may be at least one descendant that has tested positive for it, but it's, some of the other ones, they are merely just kind of guessing on it.
What I took from that is that porphyria was named for purple pee-pee.
Yes.
Classic. Go ahead and say what?
As all good diseases should be named after.
Switching away from family to the detective side of things, this was our first DC Gail Stevens, played by Kirstie Dillon. I always liked her on this show. She appeared in 24 episodes of Midsomer Murders from 2007 to 2011. She was originally from Portsmouth, Hampshire. Midsomer Murders was her first major role, and she was originally only to appear in a single episode. But they started bringing her back, and the rest is history. I think clearly part of the reason they brought her back is she had great chemistry with Jason Hughes, and towards the end of her run, they really were sort of developing a will they, won't they sort of relationship. Mm-hmm. But she left the show on the same episode that John Nettles retired. Now, I dug around. I could not find a reason why she left the show exactly. In recent interviews, she has talked about battles with PTSD, OCD, anorexia, and bulimia. But if it's because she was having some issues, or because they were doing a big reshuffle with sort of bringing in the new stars, or some other reason, it's just not out there in an easy to find way. So since leaving Midsomer, she's appeared in the film Locke and in the shows Casualty, Emmerdale Farms, and CB Strike. Jones also had some classic Jonesy moments in this one. Yeah.
He's a little pissy in this one.
He is. And, kind of, as we said, rightly so. There's no case here.
Yeah. He seems to be wondering what they're doing until, bodies do actually start showing up.
Yeah.
My favorite Jones moment in this is when he's in the church and Barnaby sends him out to wait in the car because he doesn't like the organ music. And so they show him and the car is rocking away to rock music and he's just sitting there listening. And that's just classic.
My favorite Jones moment, was actually it was like a subtle bit at the end when they are talking to Mr. Stock in the hospital, who says that Sir Michael is her grandfather and her father, and the cut to Jason Hughes' face is just, what?
It's Midsomer. You have to expect incest to come up sooner or later.
It just reminded me that like Jason Hughes was so good in this show and so much fun, and still miss him. Final thoughts?
Again, I think the acting in this is very, very good. I think it's a premise that is interesting, and I think it works. There's a lot of good subtle clues that are sprinkled throughout. I think they might have like edited out a few or like second references or stuff, but I think as a mystery it works very well. And I think again the acting is, I can't stress the acting on this one well enough.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they did a really good job of, this episode, they break the format. They create a pretty interesting mystery. They spin a lot of plates with a lot of like red herrings and clues, and they do a really good job of splitting the plates. And I feel at the end they probably let a couple of plates fall to the ground because maybe for time, I don't know, but great acting. I care about the characters. I had a lot of fun with it. I just wish I understood more what the hell was going on with Sir Michael and his family, because it seemed, weird, and not weird in the he wants to do selective breeding with his own kids, which is weird enough, but also just like I guess we just don't get the biggest behind the reveal. Like we don't get the daughter's viewpoints of like what it was like living with him, Yeah. And that I feel is, I feel like maybe that would have opened up that mystery a little bit, but time constraints, things are. I still say it's a great episode. It's just, you gotta want to have to shower at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand why it's very controversial.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt they knew that this was going to be a controversial episode. That's why they put James Fox in it, to give it, he sells it, and he sells it well, and also it gives it a little bit more legitimacy.
Yeah.
That's everything we wanted to talk about this episode. We want to thank everyone for listening to us. If you had anything you want to discuss about this episode masterclass or Midsomer Murders in general, feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. As you said at the top, we've been getting emails. We love it. Send more. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you hate. Tell us what you agree with us on. Tell us what you disagree with us on. Do you think this episode's garbage? Do you think this episode is genius? Tell us. And if you want us to use your email in the show, please say so in it. Just say, okay to air. We are also Welcome to Midsomer on all the things, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Not on TikTok, because we're too old. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes. It really helps people find us. And also tell all your friends about us. We will be back next month, so we hope you will join us again. As we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, piano competitions can be murder.
And usually are.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.